Hold on one second. So funny. Glad nobody's watching. If you're watching the replay, I started live and didn't pause my television. I was so happy to watch hockey because they're replaying Game Sevens of Stanley Cup Finals in honor of today being a day where they would have started the playoffs for hockey. So, huge hockey fan, by the way. All right, so I'm at my teaching desk because I had the bright idea of you can't see it, but my computer right there. Oop, there it is. My computer right there. I had the bright idea of updating the software, and I did not know it was going to take an hour to update the software. But I've had kind of a lazy day today. Today is Silent Saturday, and I had been thinking about it. There was a message I was listening to earlier. You guys might have seen the watch party if you're on my personal page. And the message was about the Silent Saturday. And it really got me to thinking about a whole lot of stuff, right? Of course, as a Christian, you think about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and that, tomorrow is the day that he rose and showed that he was God. And you know the story, whether you're a Christian or not, I'm sure you know the story. And this is not a religious message, by the way. I am not necessarily one that could give a decent religious message because there's so little that I know. But I do know that today is Silent Saturday. Silent Saturday being the Saturday between the crucifixion, which definitely was not silent for Jesus Christ, and then when he rose on the following day, and essentially he had already began changing the world, but essentially changed the world. The one man that walked this earth who there's so many things that lead to him, his crucifixion, his birth, right? The dates go by his birth, just a whole bunch. And again, I'm not one to teach all that kind of stuff, but Silent Saturday, as I was listening to the message, I'm going to push a button here. Somehow I didn't go live on Twitter, and it's telling me that I need to try again. Nope, there's an error. So Periscope. So I'm not broadcasting on Twitter today. I'm on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook. And so Silent Saturday in this message was just talking about how it's a day where Jesus was around. Essentially, he was in the tomb, and it's an important aspect of the entire story of the crucifixion, the Silent Saturday, and then Sunday and his rising. I talked on the phone today with a friend of mine for 2 hours. I kind of laid around on the couch, watched a movie. And in that time, I was thinking, because I planned on doing nothing today. I have a lot of stuff I could be doing, but I really planned on doing nothing today because I've not done that since quarantine. Since quarantine, I've been busier than I probably have been out of quarantine. It's just been really crazy. I've done a lot of lives. I've done a lot of connecting with clients who need help with their live streaming, and I've been able to consult with people and some very famous people that I had no idea that would ever even know who I am, but they called and wanted help with some stuff. So it's been crazy. But today on my Silent Saturday, right, I intended it on being fairly silent. I thought about it's not just Jesus Christ, right, that can benefit. I don't know if benefit is the right word. What word should I think of instead? The Silent Saturday in the story of Jesus Christ is again a powerful message on its own right, for that story, for everything that he went through and was tortured and spit on and called names and all those kinds of things. And I really got me thinking that, and I'm not comparing myself or anybody else to Jesus. So those of you, again, this isn't a religious message. I'm just using it as kind of, it may be a leap, but I think that we can reflect on his story and put our story in there. That prior to today, in all the things that we've been through in our life, some people have had cancer and survived. Some people currently have cancer and are struggling. I've gone through 2 divorces. There's other people that I know that I'm talking to right now that are in the middle of divorcing their spouse. And I don't think COVID-19 had anything to do with it. It just happens that they've now are going through a divorce, and I know more than one, strangely enough. So that is not good, right? It's not happy. It's difficult. It's painful. If you have children, it's 10 times as painful. And then you got to worry about money, right? And then you have money issues. People have money issues regardless of a divorce, just because things happen. It's not because you did anything wrong. I made bad decisions on one of my businesses, and it put me in a horrible financial issue. And my intention was good, right? I started a security company. We were doing security for some major corporations and companies, and the intention was good. I didn't mean to nearly bankrupt us. It just was bad decisions and bad timing, and it just went horribly wrong. And that is stressful. And if you look at it in a similar, if you want to call it your crucifixion, again, don't get mad at me if I'm trying to take something with Jesus Christ and put it to a human, an average mortal human, because his torture was horrible, right? His torture, if you ever watched Passion of the Christ, and I've watched it almost not every Easter, but many Easters, and I'm thinking that it was probably that bad. When you read about it and you read history books on it and that kind of stuff, what they used for tools to strike Jesus and whip him, and the gouging of his skin, that kind of stuff. Again, some of you may have been through horrible accidents where you've lost a body part, or you've you have an injury that you're still suffering from today. I had a crash when I was a police officer. I was driving at a high rate of speed with my lights and siren on, and a young girl turned in front of me and hit my police car, and I ran smack dab in the middle of a telephone pole at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. And thank God for airbags, because that's what saved my life. And then later on, I was going through an intersection in Anaheim, and somebody ran a red light and hit me on the way to a domestic violence call. And that affected me. It caused me to be retired from the police department. So again, I'm not saying that when I say crucifixion towards you or myself, I know that it's not what Jesus went through. So I know that, but we have some painful things, right? Some of you have been married to abusive spouses, verbally abusive, physically abusive. That is horrible, right? It is just this. And I used to be a detective in family crimes, right? I investigated a lot of domestic violence. I saw women that were stabbed. I have seen them burned. I've seen them thrown out of moving cars. And so that treacherous and a bit of a crucifixion of a human being by a spouse. And so I just want to I want to be careful, because I don't want to upset anybody. But up to today, Silent Saturday, today, everything that you've been through, every pain, every disease, every turmoil, been. Maybe you had children that suddenly are, doing things, and maybe they've committed suicide or attempted suicide or what have you. And all those things you've been through are horrible things. But you're here today. You're here today on Silent Saturday. Why do I bring all this negative stuff up? Because it's part of your life. It's what you've been through. And quite often, somebody with your story can change somebody else's life. And if you've been watching me since quarantine and all the Facebook lives, I've had all my friends making fun of me because I've been on nearly every day, if not sometimes twice a day. I've been trying to tell you that you need to use this time as a hurdle, not as a hurdle, as to pole vault whatever next stage that you want your life to go to, where you want it to be, and where what is it you want to be when you grow up, right? I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. What is it that you're going to do with everything you've been through, your past, the things that you've been through? The thing is that you're here today on Silent Saturday because you survived whatever that was. It didn't kill you. You probably thought at the time you were going to die. I tried to commit suicide, or I started to commit suicide when I was in my early 20s. I never thought ever that I would tell that story, because I was all by myself with a gun in my mouth in my room at 21 or 22 years of age. And I had put pressure on the trigger, so much so that the hammer started to go back. Right? That's how close I came. And then I saw something on television that showed me how stupid I was. And that was those children starving in Africa. It was one of those infomercials with Sally Struthers. I always say Sally Fields, but it's Sally Struthers. And I never thought that I would share that story, right? It took until I believe it was my late 40s, early 50s, for me to tell anybody about that. And, I think I did it on a stage in front of a couple hundred people. For the first time, I shared that story. And so many people came up to me afterward and said, "Oh my gosh, that that story that you told, the willingness to stand up there and say what you said, and to share means so much to me, because I have held things in, and I now feel that I can share, and I think it'll be powerful if I share. And that showed me at that moment that all of us have a story. You have a story, whatever it is. I see Valerie talked about, and I hope she doesn't mind me putting this up, but my childhood being abused. Yes, yes. You are here and you survived. And it you have to tell the story of how you survived, right? Your story of success, of getting through it. Maybe not success and having millions of dollars in the bank, or whatever you think success is. Success quite often is surviving cancer, surviving divorce, surviving when you lose a child, surviving abuse, all those things. You are a survivor in all those areas. And it is time for you to rise. It is time for you to share. It is time for you to tell people your story. It is time for you to do something with your past pain, whatever that is. Maybe you're not using that directly, but you go, you know what? I survived. I could have died. I mean, I could have, I could have chose another path. I could have chose drugs. I could have chose alcohol. I could have chose, cutting myself. All the things that we do to torture ourselves because we feel so much pain on the inside. And then we move into something else, drugs, cutting yourself. All those things are real. People do it. Instead of doing that, hopefully you're here today on Silent Saturday, an important day, right, in our history. Those of us that are Christians, it's a really important day. It's the day between the crucifixion and Jesus rising and showing us that he was God. Right? You don't have to believe in God in order to get something out of this message, by the way. And that's why I put in the description, this is not a religious message, but you can take all of your pain, all of the torture, all of the things you've been through in the past, and really decide today on Silent Saturday that is behind me, but I'm not gonna forget it, right? You never want to forget. You want to forgive people, but you don't want to forget, right, what they did, so you don't repeat it, right? It's not that when you decide to forgive somebody that abused you or tortured you or hurt you in some way, you can forgive them without forgetting. And I think the important thing about not forgetting it is that you don't want to do it again, right? You want to remember every aspect of it that got you to that thing, that place where you were being tortured, and figure out how you can avoid that if possible. Sometimes you can't, right? Car accidents. I could not stop that girl from turning into my police car and driving my car into that telephone pole at 50 miles an hour. There was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I could have maybe not gone code 3, but it was an officer needs assistant. The helicopter was flying over and giving information that the guy with the gun was in the trash bin that this officer was getting ready to walk by. And so when I heard that, that's when I hit my lights and siren, because the officer couldn't hear the helicopter observer telling him that, watch out, the guy with the gun is in the trash bin and you're walking right towards that trash bin. For whatever reason, the officer couldn't hear it because he kept walking. That was the information coming from the helicopter. So I hit it hard. I slammed down the accelerator. I turned on my lights and siren. And next thing you know, I'm heading right for a telephone pole and crashed. And that's the last thing I remember. I remember people dragging me out because I thought the car was on fire. And I was laying there on the asphalt in my uniform, and they drugged me out and they got on my radio and said I needed help. But what can I learn from that? I don't know. There's a lot of different things I probably can learn. What we did learn is that the shotgun should not be mounted behind the head of a patrolman, because when that airbag comes out, it hits you in the face and then shoves you back into that shotgun. So that's something that they learned, right? They learned, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have that in there, because it caused Andy to have a major concussion and a head injury that I still suffer with in some cases today, right? So there's certain things you can learn. So whatever it is that you can learn from whatever that you had gone through, how to survive, right? Maybe there's a lesson in, this is what I did. I did these 10 steps, these 15 steps, whatever it is, to overcome my abuse, or how I took these 10 things and survived the pain of blah, blah, blah. I decided to open up the Bible. What did the Bible teach me about me in relationship to the abuse that I went through? It teaches you it's not your fault, right? They teach you, the Bible teaches you it's not your fault. It teaches you to have joy in your pain and discomfort. And what? Have joy when you're tortured? Have joy in not that it happened, but have joy with possibly what comes out of it. What is it you're going to do? Because the joy is that you learn from it, right? It created who you are now, given that you didn't decide to, go to meth and cocaine and heroin, alcohol and that kind of stuff. But if you went through all those, now how did you get out of that? So there's something every step of the way that you can take from your pain and suffering and discomfort and your torture, and make a decision today on Silent Saturday that your rise is going to be tomorrow. Right? Your rise along with Jesus will be tomorrow. Maybe even make it on Monday, because maybe you're going to celebrate Jesus' resurrection on Sunday, and just enjoy the day, and maybe make some notes, maybe journal, and watch some of my videos where I show you how to share your story on lives. A lot of people are watching lives right now. I have people that are watching right now. Let me share this message. It may trigger something with somebody. I hope so. I got April Roga watching live. I got Habib Hussein watching, and Valerie, and then a number of other people that aren't telling me that they're who they are and where they're watching from, but I can see the numbers. That's what will happen to you. You're going to say, okay, I'm gonna take my story and I'm going to figure out what things I did to survive. Or I'm going to look back and say, and really think about, how is it that all of that crap happened to me? All of that stuff, and here I am, Valerie, successful marriage, and working at one of the biggest companies in the world, UPS, right? And has a job that has fed her family and her children, and her husband, right? And how did I get through? And I'm just talking for Valerie because she put that she was abused as a child. Is that Valerie will say, how is it that I did not turn out like some people do when they're abused, where they turn into bank robberies? And many of the men that are in prison are from abusive lives, right? They've been either tortured or abused as a child. They're products of divorce, of fatherless, right? It's really common for a man in prison, and maybe even a woman. I know a lot about men being in prison. It's because they often did not grow up with a father figure that taught them the difference between right and wrong, and for whatever reason, that connection between a young boy and their dad is what many men need as they get older to be great men. Now, again, there's other men who didn't have a father that are fantastic, right? They may become president of the United States or whatever. I'm not sure of any. I wonder if there is. I got to look that up. Are there any presidents that didn't have a father growing up? I wonder. That's a good question. Somebody look at April. You're good at looking stuff up. Is there any president that didn't have a father growing up? Because that would be really good to know. Because I do know for sure many men in prison didn't have a father, right, and don't have a father. Illiteracy is another reason why many men end up in prison if they can't read. Those are just some of the things, right? Or grew up in a house where drugs were being taken by the parents, all those things, right? So if you're one of those men who maybe still went to prison, but got out of prison and decided to change your life, what was it that happened that changed your life? What was the thing? It's not just prison, right? Prison does change people, sometimes for the worst and sometimes for better. And so what is it? What is the thing? And I don't mean to get stuck on prison, but what is it that changed my mind? Was it the beating, the beating that I had? I'm not coming back to this place. But then maybe tell that story, and then what it is you did to have success after that. What were the steps you took when you got out? You went back to school. What were the things? Who were your influences? All these things, all this stuff matters, right? You can think that nobody needs your advice or needs what it is that you did. I'm telling you, there's somebody out there where your story in particular, right? They may not listen to me for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe they don't like the way I sound and they turn me off right away, right? But you may be the person that person needs, that will change their life. And it's your story, your connection, your voice, the way that you present yourself, whatever it is, you're going to connect with somebody. It just may not be my audience. I have an audience that, for a reason, watches from time to time. I have a couple of really good friends that watch often, like April and Valerie watches often, and Dale often watches. But there's going to be somebody that wants to hear your message. I'm telling you the truth. I promise you. When I wrote the book, Walking with God and the Dog, the best emails that I get are from men who tell me that my story helped them get through something. They're some of my favorite emails. And it's maybe those 5 or 6 emails that I've got. I haven't got hundreds, Oh, Herbert Hoover. Nice. Thank you, Bert. Wow. That's interesting. How was he as a president? I can't remember. I think he was a decent president, wasn't he? I don't know that much about Herbert. It has a horrible name. I'm sorry. If there's anybody named Hubert watching, I'm sorry. But interesting. Interesting. There, Herbert. That's a hard name to say. I've always had trouble saying his name. That's why I never learned about him, because I didn't want to read a book with his name in it. It's too hard to repeat. So use this Silent Saturday to really think, what is it that I can share with the world that may change somebody else's life? All right, there's something. You've been through something. I know, especially of us that are in our 50s, right? There is, a lot of history. The phone call I told you I was on for 2 hours. That we've had a couple long conversations with a couple of my friends for a really, really long time. And sometimes they ask me, so what was it like for you in high school? And who, what were your parents like, and that kind of stuff. And I get into these stories, and with me, I have many friends who said, you need to write a book. You have crazy story. I have some crazy stories, right? I wanted to be a stuntman, so I worked out with a bunch of stuntmen in East LA, and and they nearly killed me a couple times, which was awesome. It was great fun, right? So I have those stories about how they nearly killed me a couple times, nearly choked me out. Fighting with them, physically fighting for real, so that you can make a fight look good on camera, right? And so that we really had some pretty fun knockdown, drag out fight, really striking each other and choking each other. I got choked out twice, completely out. They just put his arm around this big guy, right? This is a big jiu-jitsu guy, choked me out. I used to drive buses to Mammoth and Colorado and Utah, and I nearly drove a bus. It's in a snowstorm. It nearly slid off the road. It could have gone one way or the other. It could have gone off the mountain or into the mountain. And thank God for me, the bus slid into the mountain. I had a bus load 47 passengers of Boy Scouts. Yes, that would have been a horrible story to read about on the news, right? So I have that kind of story. I was a magician. I did magic, and for many years, since the age I was 9, I remember getting my first magic kit, and did magic, and then did magic for a living. I worked in restaurants. I worked at Knott's Berry Farm. I juggled. I made balloon animals. I did all that stuff. I was more of an adult magician, balloon animal stuff, because I would do adult things. That sounds bad now you say it. Adult things with the balloons, right? But it was funny, and the people liked it. And I worked at Bobby McGee's restaurant there in Brea, California. And I got tons of stories. People would tip me with cocaine. They would tip me with marijuana. It was a crazy time in my life. I worked with Kato Kalin, who would later on be famous for the OJ stuff. And so these are just stories, right? So, and I didn't mean to go down that whole road, but I'm just telling you, I know you have stories. I know you have things that you can share. Maybe they're humorous, right? I have a lot of very humorous stories as a cop. There's a lot of humorous stuff that happens as a cop. And so right now I'm working on a book called Good Cop, Bad Cop. And it's to talk about why some cops go bad, and why some cops are just are good. And the difference between the two, and how they get there sometimes. Because I investigate now police officers who sometimes do the wrong thing. So I that's what I do for a living, or had done for a living before the quarantine hit. I would study court cases and arrest records and reports and that kind of stuff. And so there's so many stories, right? And so you have those stories. Deborah Sweeney in the CBD business, she could write a book about CBD and how it's helped people, and use those stories, and write it doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be long. Nabi Kleinman write a book about finances, and he has, right? And has created a course that people can go to and teach them about their finances and how they could do better with their finances. Who else do I have on here that I could talk about? Dale Garza, I think you do a radio show or something. I'm sure you have stories on there. It's our age. All we had was old Western movies and wanted to be a stuntman. I know. At Knott's Berry Farm, when I worked there, on my lunch break, I'd always watch the Stuntman show. That was always my thing. Robin Phillips, You're a Sick Man, Falco, adult balloon toys. Were you part of my act? Oh, thank you. Still doing magic on IG. Gosh. What is that? Nothing about you're silly. I use my own clown business and make balloons too. Oh, really? That's that's so awesome. I had a very small what is it? A small catalog of balloon animals. I made a rabbit, a bear, a wiener dog. Always have to make a wiener dog, right? A poodle, a snake. The snake was my favorite. I made a lot of snakes. And then I put the paws of the bunny rabbit or the bear into the bottom legs, right? So I pushed, so you have the two legs and you push the front paws into the two legs. And then if you look at the bottom, it looks like what the, oh my gosh, I told the joke 1,000 times. Anybody ever wonder what the, what's the guy, the guy that's in the toilet that cleans the toilet? What was that guy's name? It was a commercial. Shoot, the Tidy Bowl Man. You ever wonder what the Tidy Bowl Man sees when he's cleaning a toilet? And I turn the balloon upside down, and it looks like a pair of buns in a toilet seat. I swear it was funny. I swear people would laugh, and they thought it was hilarious. Really, I swear to gosh. I can see you doing that because you are so naturally. Thanks. I don't know about that. My kids will say, "Dad, you're not as funny as you think you are." Well, all right. As long as I laugh, who really cares? All right, so I want you to use this Silent Saturday. Sorry, I went off this bunny trail. Yeah, and my stage name was Andini. I've been talking about that a lot lately. You know, there's certain subjects that kind of come up, and now they become a regular part of my show. But I may go back to that name, Andini. It is a fantastic name, and it got me a long ways for years. I did magic all over the place as Andini. I wore a white tuxedo with tails, with tennis shoes, and long hair. There was another magician named Larry Wilson, so I kind of stole his look. Larry Wilson wore a white tuxedo, had long hair, and he wore tennis shoes. And he was a comedy magician, and I stole from him. I think I might have even stole some of his jokes. Yes, I did plagiarize some of his jokes, but they were funny. They were hilarious. All right, so your past crucifixion, your past torture, your past disease, your past abuse, your past bad decisions that cost you your house or caused you to go bankrupt. Whatever those things are in the past, and now I want you to use them. Take the Silent Saturday, get out a journal, and write down some of your past, some of the things you've been through, and really, really concentrate on how it is you can use any of those stories. Pick one. Because I tell you, after you write one book, it becomes addictive. That's why I'm up to like 20-something books, 22 books or something like that I've written in journals. And it's addicting, right? You just now, they just kind of falls, the words fall out of your head onto the computer, and they turn into other books. Not all the books are great, by the way. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a couple I took off of Amazon because they really weren't that great. And so don't feel bad about that, right? If you write a book and it's a dog, then just pull it off and then write another one, all right? Or take that content and repurpose it and build a better book. You can do that. Don't be afraid. So many things about your rise after today's Silent Saturday is that you're afraid, right? You have fear. You have barriers. You have resistance for your future. All of that is real too. I understand that. But you have to get past it. You have to move through the pain, through the discomfort, through what you are perceiving to be embarrassment, right? Hey, when I started this Facebook Live, I didn't do it on purpose, but I forgot to turn off the TV. And I had to run over there, right after I went live, which I would tell everybody that does a Facebook Live, make sure that you start with information and content right away. Don't wait. So I violated one of my pet peeves and didn't start the show right away, right? Because I had to go turn off the TV. But I didn't kill me, right? I'm still alive. Many people would be so embarrassed. They go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that." And it's one of those things that they wouldn't be able to let go of. I had a prisoner escape from me at Western Medical in Anaheim that I can't remember what happened to him. Anyway, I had to take him to the hospital. I probably beat him up or something, but I had to take him. I know. And I had to take him to the hospital, right? And so I sit him on the bed in the emergency room when I get in there. And I was really attracted to the nurse that was working those days. I think her name was Becky, I think. I can't remember her name. But I think it was Becky, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I really liked her. She was really cute. And so I put the prisoner on the bed, and then I said, stay right here. We'll get the doctor over here, and and do whatever needed to be done. And so there's a barrier, a little wall between where the prisoner was sitting and where the nurse's station was, where she sat and directed people coming in through the door, that kind of stuff. And so I was leaning up against the barrier like this with my face on this side, on her side, and saying, hey, I had my uniform on. I was all tucked in. I made sure to comb my hair before I went in there. I had, put whatever mouthwash in my mouth that I had, because you always want to carry that around unless you don't like somebody and you want to have bad breath and you speak to that person with bad breath. But in most cases, you always want to make sure and have fresh breath when you're making contact with the citizens. And so I had that all in there, right? And I'm like looking cool. I'm trying to flex my muscle by putting it up against the wall and talking to her. And then I lean back just to see what the prisoner's doing, and he's gone. Where'd he go? And I go run into the room, and I'm like looking around, and then it's almost like you can see the doors, ching, ching, ching. I go, shit. And so I run through the door, and there's a doctor, or I don't know what he is really, but I think it was a doctor or a nurse walking down the hallway, and he's just walking. I go, did you see a prisoner go by, a guy handcuffed come by here? And he goes, yeah, he went that way, and he was running really fast. I go, and you're just standing, and you're just walking, like you didn't say, hey, officer, your prisoner's getting away. He said nothing. I had to ask him if he saw a man in handcuffs go. I'm sorry I'm yelling, but it was so freaking crazy. And so he runs out the doors, and it's right towards the exit. And of course, those doors are now going ting, ting, right as he ran out the doors. And I ran out in the back lot. It leads to a Kentucky Fried Chicken and a McDonald's, and there's bushes and that kind of stuff. And then there's Ball Road, which is a major highway in Anaheim, a major street, not a major highway, a major street in Anaheim. 3 lanes going each direction, so 6 lanes total, and nowhere to be found. Shoot, where'd he go? And so that's the moment that, as a cop, that you just hate, is that you have to get on the radio and admit something that you did horribly, just horrible. Everybody's listening. The watch commander's listening. Every officer that's on duty, something like 45 to 50 cops are on duty, and you got to get on the radio and say, my prisoner escaped from Western Med. Oh God, I was only on the job for maybe a year and a half, something like that. I don't know. I wasn't on very long. I was still a boot. I think I was past my probation, so it was probably a year and a couple months. And thank God, because they can fire you during your probation. It's hard to fire a cop after probation. And so, so the world had to come. They surrounded the area. The helicopter's there. It was before I was in K9, so the K9 gets there. It's the first time I saw a police dog bite anybody. He gets his dog out to start searching, and then there's a bush right outside the exit, probably about 50 feet. And the suspect was hiding in the bush. I didn't know it. You couldn't see him. The dog was searching, goes into the bush and bites the guy and drags him out of the bush. And it was amazing, awesome to watch. It was just horrible going into the watch commander's office, explaining what I was doing prior to the suspect escaping. Which, of course, I did not tell him I was trying to pick on the nurse. I did not say that. I just said I was trying to give her the information about the prisoner and his conditions. And I was, doing everything that I should have been doing. But I didn't say I was flirting with the gal, not the guy. Wow, that was really crazy. It was a girl, I promise you. All right. Why did I tell you that story? Oh, because it's stories. I mean, these are things. Again, I haven't thought about that story in, I can't tell you, 10 years. It didn't even enter my mind. But when you sit down with your journal, the basis for that story is that you're going to sit down with your journal and you're just going to reflect. Just sit in silence, have the TV turned off, maybe put on some classical music or something like that. And this is something that I've done from time to time. Some music without words, right? It's just music playing in the background. Sometimes it's the ocean sounds, right? You have the nature sounds that you can put on Alexa, and have that playing, and get out your journal, get out a pencil, right? Go old school. You might do it on a computer, but get out a pencil in a journal and just write. Just write. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about spelling. Just write out your thoughts. And when I was 5, when I was 10, when I was going through some of the abuse, what was I thinking about myself? Was I thinking, what is it, my fault? Was I thinking that, my dad needed to die? Did I think about killing him? All these things. Be painfully honest with yourself and write it down and cry. Feel free to cry. You've seen me cry on freaking StreamYard, right? It's not unusual, but feel free to lay out your emotions and write them down, and then things will begin to come out, and you're going to say, wow, I think I can help somebody with that story. I think that if I write this down and explain the steps that I took when I realized it was no longer my fault, right? The first step was determining that it's not my fault. I didn't, as a child, it's not my fault that my dad beat me or tortured me or whatever, or my mom, right? I always leave out the moms. I arrested a few moms for child abuse when I was a sex crimes detective. And so begin to write those stories. One of the stories that I plan on telling is how I got out of detectives. And the reason I got out of detectives is because I was interviewing a child molester who had a lump on his back, right? He had a hump, not a lump, but a hump on his back. And he was a dwarf. So he was a dwarf. He's got a hump on his back. He's working at a church, a Catholic church, as a janitor. And the pastor allows him to stay at his house where he has a 6-year-old daughter. The little man digitally penetrated the little girl and did other stuff to her. That was my case. And so I hope I don't cry. I might. And so I was really good at interviewing and getting confessions out of people. I would talk to them, kind of make them feel like they were friends of mine, ask them about their past, ask them a lot about their life. Before I would ask them, where were you on July 13th at 6 o'clock when the robbery occurred, right? Or the rape occurred or whatever it was. I would spend more time in the beginning just getting to know them and showing them that I cared about them, regardless of what they've done, right? If you can make somebody feel that you care about them, they're going to tell you way more stuff than if they look at you as a dumbass cop who's ruining their life, right? If you can switch that mindset that they have with you, wearing casual clothes, not a suit. I didn't like wearing a suit when I interview people. I like to wear casual clothes, and I would sit there and ask them about them, who they are, and then sometimes agree with certain things they said, even though I didn't agree with what they said. Right? You just go, oh yeah, oh I know exactly how you feel. Yeah, no, I you know what, I know that feeling, right? Even though I never had that feeling. And so as I'm talking to him, I did the same thing, right? I made him feel comfortable, and he almost wanted to tell me stuff by the time I got to the parts where I needed him to tell me more about what happened. And the story that he told me about himself was that he was raped as a child, and in the village that he grew up in, it was in the rainforests of South America, that it was common practice for the men of the tribe to have sex with the boys. It was every boy, little boy in that tribe was sexually abused. And hearing his story and looking at him, right? I'm looking at a guy that's a dwarf. He has a humpback. And he's telling me the story of being tortured and raped as a child. And that it's just what was part of his life. And here, living in with the pastor, and he said they were so kind to me, and they fed me, and they gave me clothing, and took care of me. I don't know why I did it. It's just it was a natural. It felt like a natural thing to do because that's what was done to me, and I'm sorry. And then he began to tell me more stuff that he did to this 6-year-old girl than what we knew, than what the 6-year-old shared, and what we knew from evidence and that kind of stuff. And I had this feeling of sorrow for him and her. And if you ever thought, and I never thought ever, that I would feel compassion for a child molester, it's happening. I'm looking at Nobby's message to make me smile. I never thought I would feel compassion for a child molester, ever. You wouldn't, if you ever told me before that day, I would say you are nuts. I hope they all die. Right? I hope I hope soon that we can castrate them, like physically castrate, not chemically, like physically. Get the guy with the hood and the axe and castrate child molesters. So never thought ever that I could feel compassion and sorrow for a child molester, and that day was the day. And it was not a good feeling. I didn't like it. I hated it. I don't know why. And of course, I felt compassion and sorrow for the little girl and the family and the pastor who was doing a kind thing by letting this man stay in their home. And look what happened, right? And there's just so many of these feelings. I walked out of the interview, and I walked into the sergeant's office, who was watching the interview on a closed circuit television and heard everything. And I walked in and sat down, and he goes, "Dude, you are amazing at that. How did you get him to tell you all that stuff? Like, you are so good." And I said, "Well, it's my last one. I got to get out. I can't I can't stay here. I can't do this. And he goes, what? You're crazy. And I said, no, I think that's the problem. Maybe it's going to turn me crazy. And I got out the documentation for the request for transfer back to patrol. I filled it out and handed it to him within an hour, and told him I was done. And so I went back to patrol and became the trainer for the police department, the canine trainer for the police department, and that changed my entire life. I got invited to be the trainer for the police department. That decision to leave detectives and go back and then be the trainer for the police department changed my life. Right, I started Falco Canine Academy and a bunch of other stuff. And this is just coming to right now when I'm speaking to you, right? So here's an example. I'm giving you an example of how when you begin to really think about stuff, I haven't thought about any of those things in a long time, but the connection between each step that I took and what ended up happening with the dog world, that lead in, that may now be part of my book, not Bad Cop. And I don't have a firm direction on that book yet, but that really could be the opening for my book. And so there's an example for you. And I see I'm not losing people, so I'm so happy. That write down, tell your story. Maybe tell some stories to your family and get it all. Sometimes, again, my kids ask me all the time, Dad, tell me another story when you were a cop. And of course, there's many stories I can't tell them. But there's some really cool stories that I need something to trigger the thought. And sometimes it's that question, Dad, tell us, something about you and a cop. Tell us about what it was like in the academy. Tell us what it was like when you first started. Who did you have to work with before you were by yourself? And they asked me these stories. One of the books that I wrote called Police Dog Recruit, which is a children's book, came out of a discussion I had with my son one night when I was reading him a bedtime story. And actually, before I read the book that I had at the time, he asked me to talk about dogs. And he goes, Dad, it's so great. I've seen a lot of books about dogs, but I've never seen a book. And I think he was 8 at the time. He goes, I've never seen a book or heard of a book that explains why you guys use police dogs. Why is it, in a children's book, why is it that the dogs are used for narcotics? Why are they used to search for suspects? What is it about their nose? How come their nose seems to be so good at doing this kind of thing? And it was that question that led to this children's book where he and I put together a story of a puppy that wanted to be a police dog when he grew up, because his father and grandfather were police dogs. And in the book, there's even pictures on the wall of the dad in his police uniform and the grandpa in his police uniform with glasses on the end of his nose. It's really cute. And the story is this puppy wants to be a police dog when he grows up, and so he starts doing stuff. He starts eating well, eating good food. He gets exercise, and he practices using his nose. And one day he solves a crime kind of by accident, because he came across, during one of his walks, a robbery that just occurred. And in that walk, he tracked down the bag of money that the suspects had stolen from the bank. And that's the story. So that's the story that my son and I kind of concocted and kind of put together. But the difference between this book and others is that you have the children's story, and then down at the bottom, it has an explanation as to why the dog does that. So in the area of where he's talking about good nutrition, I talk about why it's important to feed the dogs a good quality protein and avoid rendered meat, right? So I have an adult version down at the bottom so that they can explain to the child that they're reading to why a dog needs to have a good, healthy diet. And that explanation is down at the bottom. When the dog's using his nose, I talk about the olfactory system of the dog and use adult words to explain the olfactory system and how it separates odors, and how the nose is stereo, right? Each nostril smells separately, not like us. It just smells both at the same time. The dog's nostril smells separately. There's a chamber in the dog's olfactory system in his snout that's dedicated solely to working out and sorting out the odors that a dog is smelling every second of every day. And then there's a part of the dog's brain that's dedicated solely to odor recognition and determining, even when smelling pee, the sex of the dog that left the pee, right? And what breed they are and all that kind of stuff, if they're in heat and not. And so there's a section of that brain that's gauged towards odor evaluation and that kind of stuff. And so that's all in the adult section. And so there you go. That's the story. And so that came from telling a story with my son, and it culminated. culminated, right? That sounds funny when I'm saying it, into an actual book that we sold, became #1 international best-selling authors. He and I appeared on different news shows. On Father's Day, we were on NBC telling how he and I created this book and wrote the book and became best-selling authors, and that was on Father's Day. We went to a couple places where we got preempted by something, some forest fire or something like that. So we went all the way into the studio, got all mic'd up and sat there, and then we never went on camera because of something that was going on in the world, and it didn't happen. But there's again, a couple examples. I'm telling you that it's real. The ability to use your story or your your past to help other people is real. So I went on. Wait, I thought I was gonna get on early on and say this is gonna be a very short video. And so again, just for those of you that are coming on now, today is Silent Saturday, between the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and the day that he rose. But for you, this Silent Saturday can also be important. You can take everything that you've been tortured by in the past, divorce, death in the family, death of a child, abuse, all the things, money problems, right? You can take, and that's all part of your crucifixion story. Today is Silent Saturday. What are you going to do to rise on Sunday or Monday? I would say Monday. Celebrate Jesus is rising. If you're a Christian, then celebrate tomorrow. But on Monday, what is it you're going to do to rise and change your life and do something different, something entirely different than what you're doing now? You could still do what you're doing, right? You could still work for UPS. You could still, have your CBD business. I'm looking at the people that are on here trying to get ideas. A number of whatever, work in a hospital, whatever you're doing. And you can now enhance that career by writing your book, writing your story, by directing people at some point in that story as how you're doing what it is you're doing now. You can do that, or you can do something entirely different. You know what? I've always wanted to write a book about raising chickens in my backyard. I've been really good at it. The chickens are always healthy. The eggs are always fantastic, right? And you could write a book on raising backyard chickens. You can write a book on raising bees. We had bees here too. We had chickens here. We had bees here in the past. You can maybe you're the best pool cleaning person on the planet, and you have some really cool techniques on cleaning a pool, and you have stories of taking over somebody's pool that was just full of those mosquito larvae in there and that kind of stuff, and as green as hell, and use that story, right, in your book to teach other people how to be successful at cleaning pools. I'm throwing a whole bunch of different, just weird, bizarre things out there just to show you your idea isn't bizarre. Your story isn't strange. There's other people that have gone through what you've gone through, or there's other people that want to be what you've been able to accomplish and want to know how you did that, right? So you either have people that can learn from your past and how you escaped the abuse and the pain. You have that audience, or you have an audience that want what you have now and want to know how you did it. And that's what I'm getting with the live streaming. I get a lot of people that are contacting me that want to know how to live stream and use this tool, StreamYard, and that kind of stuff. So, right, this live took a whole different life than what I thought. Navi doesn't stop. My scary story was how my turkey Henrietta disappeared only to turn up on the plate in front of me. Well, I'm sorry about Henrietta. Did she taste good? So sorry. So sorry. I could hit the mute button on my mic, I guess. Wow, so many comments here. Please don't use dogs because camels won't fit in the patrol car. What the heck? You should write a joke book. Here, this isn't a comedy show. A sex dwarf with a cat. Oh, geez. That's the story I was trying to read so that I would keep me from crying. All right. Well, I got to get off because I'm going to cough to death. Believe it or not, we nurses see this a lot in hospitals. But escaping prisoners or cops that try to pick up on you. She ended up marrying a cop, and I was so pissed because he was like what? You chose him, right? That happens, right? I go, what? I know. Why did you? They're divorced now, by the way. Why did you choose that guy? I wanted to say to her, I thought it was a joke. Why? I'm so much better than he is. As a matter of fact, I had to save his life one night. We were at a bar drinking, and he got in a fight. He I don't know, he looked at somebody wrong or something like that, and the guy waited for him outside in the parking lot. And when he stepped out, the guy started kicking his ass, and he was rolled up in a ball like a little girl. And I had to save his life because the guy was going to kill him. So I ended up having to fight the guy. But yeah, same guy that married my girl, the nurse. Damn it. She was so darn cute. I can't even tell you. She was amazing. Is he doing the? Oh, okay. I already got all those. All right, guys. Sorry for all my stories, but this was a kind of a live about your story and about stories. I had to give you some examples, and it's kind of fun. Maybe I'll do some live. I'll start another show, Andy's Stories. It will go on forever. I have way too many stories. All right. Thank you everybody for watching. Nobby, Valerie, everybody else that's on here. I lost track of all the Dale. April was on here. Bert, thanks for looking that up, Bert. FDR beat him. Dale Garza is 57. Really? I'm older than you? Huh. Hair of the dog. Oh, they want me to, last night I went over to these people's place. I know, and we were distancing. Like, we were 6 feet apart. But maybe a bit too much tequila. I could have sworn I was drinking rum to start the evening. I don't know how I transitioned from rum to tequila, but yeah, I should never do. I should never do that again. But thanks, Bert, for looking up Herbert Hoover, who was grew up in a fatherless home. That is so interesting. But he's the only one out of all of our presidents. He's the only one. I'm guessing you didn't find anybody else who grew up in a fatherless home. It is an issue, right? And that makes sense, right? They're successful. They may be butt heads from time to time and say the wrong thing, that kind of stuff as presidents. But the fact that they're successful speaks to the number of them. If Herbert's the only one who grew up in a fatherless home, that makes sense that they were able to succeed, as opposed to all the men in prison who grew up in a fatherless home, right? And that is just a fact. They're fatherless. They can't read, or both. Very high percentage of men in prison cannot read and grew up in a fatherless home, and that's how they ended up there. All right. So maybe there's something you can do. Maybe there's something in your life, something that you've done, something you've overcome, something that you have in your brain that you can share with others and change their life. All right, that's it. I'm going to finally sign off. I've gone to almost an hour, and I really did not intend for it to go now. Thank you, Murray. I appreciate you very much for watching. All right, we're gonna get off the show, and I didn't even start with a video. I'm going to end without a video. I'm just going to turn it off. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Have a great silent Saturday, and find something for next week. All right, that's it. We'll talk to you later. Bye.